Chabot. He also served as White House senior advisor to Presidents Clinton and George W. Bush. We always enjoy having you on. Thanks for being with us here tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So we have a lot to get to, but I do want to talk about what kind of is new and what's disrupted some of this. Since April 8th, since the ceasefire was put into effect, we saw for the first time missile and drone attacks against the United Arab Emirates happen. What sign is Iran trying to give the rest of the world with something like that, would you suppose?
So the UAE basically cooperates with the United States on many levels. We also have military assets that are there. But when you look at the attacks that Iran did today on UAE, they were focused on oil ports, not necessarily huge oil storage facilities, which would have been a major environmental disaster, but more or less the ports. And so firing upon UAE is also a direct attack on the United States based on the fact that we work closely with them. And the UAE largely left OPEC as well, and that may have infuriated Iran going forward.
We know that President Trump made it very clear today, essentially saying that if, for whatever reason, Iran decides to try to bully U.S. ships by firing at them, that they'll basically blow Iran to pieces, I think using some strong language again today. Your thoughts on Iran's tactic here? They essentially are going after other ships, but those smaller ships have been destroyed by the U.S.
Yeah, look, Iran is clearly in a decimated place militarily, but largely from the infrastructure of a major air force and major navy. What they're seeing here with Project Freedom, which is what the U.S. military launched, we're looking at about 87 nations, which are in the Persian Gulf, that have large vessels there, which have largely been landlocked within that region. And so the United States has moved in defensive operations, guided missile destroyers, sea-based aircraft. But we did move successfully 2 U.S.-flagged merchant vessels. And that is what triggered Iran targeting UAE as well as those merchant vessels and some of our ships. Now, Iran was not successful in striking the ships or any of our U.S. assets, but as you mentioned earlier, they were successful in striking UAE. Now, what's critical about this is what this shows is that the United States has opened up a lane within the 21-mile Strait of Hormuz. That lane, basically a single lane, has been cleared of mines along the southern portion of the strait. And that's important because it shows confidence. But again, also, we moved 2 cargo carriers, not oil ships, through that strait.
That's so interesting, and I do think it's important to note that that lane is open for business, so to speak. But you just pointed something out. You said not for oil necessarily, but we know 1/5 of the world's oil, kind of travels through that strait there. Is there a chance that they're going to try doing, shipment of oil next? How does that work?
I mean, I think we'd love to have everyone to see oil shipped through there. It would take weeks upon weeks to meet ports around the world for us to be able to see any relief potentially in gas prices. But no, in the short term, I do not see oil ships going through that strait, because one hit on that, an explosion, massive environmental impact in the strait, which could shut it down, not just militarily, but just from a destruction of the sea perspective. So I do not see us bringing oil ships. I think we're going to test it first with more merchant vessels, which are not carrying fuel or other items that could be largely seen on TV, as we're seeing tonight in UAE, where Iran was successful with their ballistic missiles and drones in hitting a port oil facility. Those items that you see on TV go around the world, and that helps to increase the price of gas here at home, unfortunately.
When we talk about hope of seeing this conflict end, we obviously understand that President Trump is making it clear that that 14-point peace plan that the ball was in the court with Iran, President Trump has essentially said, look, I don't know that I'm going to approve this plan because they haven't paid a big enough price. What does that tell you in terms of length of conflict?
Look, I do not see a peace deal in the short term at all. What I do see is Pakistan continuing to do the best job they can as a mediator between the 2 countries. If there is any hope, it's that we know a little bit more about who we are negotiating with in Iran. It's not necessarily their hard-left Ayatollah. They do have a diplomat that has been a diplomat for Iran for 30 years, who is largely their communication piece through Pakistan to us. But still, we are legions apart, because Iran now is basically asking for control, if you will, over the Strait of Hormuz. And that's a no-go internationally. Those are international waters, as they are recognized all around the globe with every single strait.
We only have a moment left, but you know, you worked with two presidents. You've been around the block. You've seen movies like this before. My question to you from a public policy communication standpoint is this. If there is a nuclear threat that Iran poses to the United States, is it incumbent upon this administration to point that out more often with the public so that they have an understanding as to why we're there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we're all seeing the gas prices here at home. That's the number one thing we care about, not necessarily the nuclear capability of Iran, although we should be. We knew that prior to the war beginning, Iran was at about 60% enriched uranium. Once you get to 90%, which takes a few weeks beyond that, you are at nuclear capability. And they do have ballistic missiles right now, which can reach most of Europe. So there is a fear, a legitimate fear of Iran and their nuclear capability. Bringing them down to about 3% for energy purposes only is really where we should have the negotiating line.
Dr. Paul Chabot, we always appreciate your perspective and your time. Thanks for joining us here tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We're keeping this conversation